Mr. Carlos Picado, turning to you now, connecting online. How can sovereign financing tools be redesigned to capture invisible knock-on effects and indirect losses that emerge weeks or months after a disaster?
Buenos días a todos. Disculpen que no hable inglés.
Good morning, everybody. Sorry because I don't speak English, but I'm speaking Spanish. So the question is a complex question because when we talk about managing the sovereign risk, this is related to the capacity of the governments to honor all their commitments or any related to future expenses and expending of governments. I'm going to refer to an important concept of being able or being capable of capture data related to losses, mainly because when we talk about losses, we are talking about a financial concept. We need to determine the effect and impact of disasters from a monetary point of view. And these lead us to trying to determine the cost or replenishment that is implied in disasters when occurring. And this, it's a pressure for the economy of a country when many of the countries are going to have certain limitations. When we talk about financing tools, one of the important concepts to take into account are those tools related to recovery. Within the possibility of resigning tools, an key element is to have knowledge to be able to interpret and recognize future losses that we are going to suffer. And all important efforts we need to make include doing an exercise called risk assessment. But this risk assessment is the assessment of risk as to the determination of future loss, to be able how much I'm going to spend and to distribute those financial instruments, and to be able to know what's the burden of disasters on the economy. But the common denominator of the Sendai framework tells us that this burden is not just limited to how much I need to invest to recover, but also how much I need to invest to prevent future disasters. And this as an additional issue. We need to consider that we need not only identify losses, but also the invisible all side effects and indirect losses. This is very important this should be very important in our analysis, because today the effort is not just to determine the direct impact of a disaster, which is basically a value of all the damaged assets or infrastructure, but also we need to determine which is going to be the impact on the economy. And so, which is a later impact, where we don't just need to recover the infrastructure that was lost on the production that we couldn't exercise, but also we need to measure what's the impact of this disaster on the economic activity of the country. And so it's not just that we need to finance the recovery, but we need to take into account this economic impact. And what I would like to tell you is that the effort in redesigning finance instruments means that we need to do a risk assessment, and the challenge of the UN Risk Reduction Office especially is to be able to do this risk analysis in terms of the direct indirect effect. And this is what we've been discussing since, I think, GAR 2019, when we are already talking about having the possibility of doing a systemic analysis and take into account which are the systemic impacts that those disasters may have. This will lead us to have a right measurement, a precise measurement of the effect, of the degree of effect of a disaster, and then try to redistribute these costs with finance tools that can be scalable, ranging from minor events to major events, in order to serve those events. Of course, we need to take into account, additionally, all the investment we need to do in critical sectors. For example, public utilities or public service infrastructure to guarantee recovery or reduce the vulnerability of such infrastructure, so that the impact of disasters is not so big. And to wrap up, what I would like to say is that it is more relevant not the identification of the threats factors, but also the vulnerability aspects of our economies. Thank you very much.